A single stone can weigh more than 50 elephants. Who had the power to lift it? We are about to embark on a global expedition to uncover the 25 ancient civilizations that mastered the art of megaliths, these colossal stone constructions that defy simple explanation. By the end, you'll possess a complete map of humanity's most audacious architectural achievements, spanning every inhabited continent. We will meet forgotten island cultures and mighty empires, all united by a single, staggering legacy carved in rock. How did hunter-gatherers erect pillars older than agriculture? Why would a society vanish after building thousands of stone towers? The answers rewrite history. What does it mean to build something meant to last forever? Our journey begins not with a pyramid or a palace, but with a hill in southeastern Turkey. Göbekli Tepe is a name that echoes through time, a site so ancient it redefines the very timeline of human achievement. This is the world's oldest known megalithic temple, constructed over 11,000 years ago. That is 6,500 years before the Great Pyramid of Giza, and a staggering 7,000 years before Stonehenge. To stand before these stones is to look into the eyes of the last ice age. The builders were not settled farmers living in cities. They were hunter-gatherers, people we once believed were solely focused on survival, moving with the seasons. Yet here, on this windswept plateau, they achieved the impossible. They quarried, shaped, and erected colossal T-shaped pillars of limestone, each one a monolith weighing 10, 15, even 20 tons. These are not crude blocks, they are masterpieces of symbolic art, intricately carved with a menagerie of the ancient world. Foxes, cranes, scorpions, and lions coil and prowl across the stone, a frozen bestiary from a forgotten spiritual universe. The implication is revolutionary. It suggests that the drive to build monumental architecture, to gather for complex ritual, may not have been a product of agriculture and settled society. It may have been the very cause of it. Perhaps it was the need to feed the hundreds of workers constructing this sacred space that first prompted the cultivation of wild grains, setting humanity on the path to farming and civilization as we know it. Then, around 8000 BC, the people of Göbekli Tepe did something as mysterious as the building itself. They carefully buried their entire monumental complex under thousands of tons of earth, preserving it perfectly for millennia. Was it a sacred interment, a ritual closing of a holy chapter, or was it an act of protection, hiding their world from a changing climate or new beliefs? The purpose of this first temple remains a profound debate, a silent question posed by 20-ton stones. It stands as civilization number one, a testament that the human impulse to reach for the monumental is far older and far more profound than we ever dreamed. From that sacred hill in Turkey, the blueprint for megaliths traveled with the dawn of civilization itself, finding its next great expression in the fertile land between two rivers. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians built the world's first true cities, and with them came a new scale of ambition etched in stone. While their iconic ziggurats, those stepped temples of baked brick, dominate our imagination, their mastery of megaliths is etched into the very foundations of their power. At the legendary city of Uruk, a place so influential its name gave us the modern country of Iraq, they did not just build with mud brick. They underpinned their most important structures with colossal stone slabs. Imagine the base of a mighty temple not resting on soil but on a platform of immense limestone blocks, each one precisely cut and fitted. These stones were the anchors of eternity, designed to stabilize their soaring architecture against time and the elements. This was a statement of permanence from history's first urban planners, but the Sumerian stonework extended beyond temples. They fortified their cities with walls that seemed born of myth, constructed from massive, irregular boulders fitted together without mortar. This technique, where gigantic stones are locked in place by their own weight and cunning geometry, would later be called Cyclopean masonry, named for the mythical one-eyed giants who were said to be the only beings strong enough to move such rocks. The Sumerians were no giants, but their engineering was titanic. They left us the first clear evidence of the technologies that made megaliths possible. Archaeological clues point to the systematic use of ramps, levers, rollers, and vast amounts of human labor coordinated with astonishing precision. They understood the principles of leverage and friction, turning impossible weights into manageable challenges. This wasn't just about strength, it was about applied intelligence. The knowledge they codified, the logistical templates they created for moving 20-ton stones, became a foundational technology. This engineering toolkit did not stay in Mesopotamia. It traveled along trade routes and through conquest, passed down and improved upon, becoming a core secret for every civilization that dreamed in stone. The Sumerians gave us writing, the wheel, and the city, but perhaps just as lastingly, they gave the world the manual for building the impossible. From that Sumerian engineering toolkit, the ambition to build in stone found its ultimate expression along the banks of the Nile. Ancient Egypt, specifically the Old Kingdom period, represents the megalithic masterclass, a civilization that turned impossible scale into an exact science. While the iconic pyramids of Giza are the crowning glory, the true genius lies in the staggering precision hidden within and around them. Consider the king's chamber inside the Great Pyramid. This is not a room of modest bricks. Its walls, floor, and ceiling are built from immense blocks of red granite, each one weighing between 25 and 80 tons. These stones were quarried from Aswan over 500 miles upriver, then shipped, lifted, and fitted together with joints so tight you cannot slide a piece of paper between them. This is a precision we would struggle to achieve today, accomplished over 4,500 years ago, but the pyramids themselves are only the most famous part of the story. Surrounding them were originally acres of brilliant white casing stones, massive slabs of polished Chora limestone that acted like a giant, sloping mirror for the sun. Each one was cut to a specific angle and locked into place, creating the pyramid's flawless, gleaming geometry. Then there are the obelisks, perhaps the most audacious statement of all. These are not assembled towers. Each one is a single, slender shaft of granite, quarried, carved, polished, and erected in one piece. The unfinished obelisk still lying in the Aswan quarry is a staggering 1,200 tons, a monument to ambition that even the Egyptians could not quite lift. To move these multi-ton stones, they employed a breathtaking logistical symphony. At the quarries, workers used dolomite balls as pounding stones to fracture the granite along natural lines. Then the colossal blocks were loaded onto wooden sledges. We have paintings showing teams of laborers pouring water in front of these sledges to reduce friction, turning the desert sand into a slick mud that allowed them to haul statues weighing as much as 700 tons. For the long journey from Aswan, they used the Nile itself as a liquid highway, loading stones onto specially built barges during the annual flood, when the water was high enough to float such immense cargo. Once at the building site, they employed a maze of ramps, levers, and sheer human coordination to inch each block into its perfect, eternal position. Their architectural ingenuity extended to techniques like the corbel vault, where each layer of stone is stepped inward slightly until the walls meet at the top, creating a strong, stable ceiling without needing a single arch. This was not the work of slaves, but of a highly organized state that could marshal the labor, feed the workers, and house the engineers for decades. It was a society that viewed monumental stone not just as architecture, but as a physical bridge to the divine, a permanent vessel for the soul. The pyramids are not just tombs, they are mountains of applied mathematics, celestial alignment, and raw logistical power. Civilization number 3. Setting a standard in megalithic construction that would echo for millennia. While Egypt's pyramids reached for the heavens, another civilization on the island of Crete built its legacy closer to the earth, weaving stone into the fabric of a vibrant palatial world. The Minoans of Bronze Age Crete, flourishing over 3,500 years ago, present a completely different vision of megalithic power. Theirs was not a culture obsessed with tombs for the afterlife, but with luminous, sprawling palaces for the living. At the heart of this world stood the Palace of Knossos, a labyrinthine complex that gave rise to the myth of the Minotaur. Here, the Minoans employed a distinctive style of megalithic architecture known as ashlar masonry. Unlike the rough, cyclopean boulders of earlier cultures, Minoan ashlar involved massive limestone blocks that were carefully squared and finished with such precision that they fit together seamlessly, needing little to no mortar. You see this most clearly in the foundational walls and the lower courses of their grandest buildings. These colossal, pale blocks provided a rock-solid base for the colorful frescoes, intricate wooden columns, and airy light wells that defined the upper floors. It was a statement of stability and refined taste. Step inside the palace and you encounter the signature Minoan Hall, a central room often built around a single, monumental pillar. This was no mere structural support. This pillar, thick and often painted with symbolic designs, likely stood at the center of important rituals or gatherings, a fixed point in the dynamic flow of courtly life. It anchored the space both physically and spiritually. This contrast is key. For many cultures, massive stones were for defense, like fortress walls, or for veneration, like temples and tombs. For the Minoans, megaliths were part of an elegant, integrated aesthetic. They used these huge, finely worked blocks to create spaces filled with light and movement, designed for commerce, administration, and ceremony. Their comfort with complex design in durable materials is hinted at by one of archaeology's great puzzles, the Phaistos disc. This is not a megalith, but a small, fired clay disc from the Palace of Phaistos, covered on both sides with a spiral of mysterious stamped symbols. While we cannot yet read its message, the very fact that someone created a permanent, stamped text in clay speaks to a culture thinking in terms of reproducible, enduring design. It reflects the same mindset that could plan and execute the precise ashlar walls of Knossos. The Minoan world was one where colossal stone met graceful artistry, where the weight of megaliths supported a society that celebrated life itself. Yet that elegant Minoan world of light and pillars did not last. It was succeeded by a culture of warriors, a civilization where stone was not an element of grace, but an instrument of raw, intimidating power. Enter the Mycenaeans, the legendary Greeks of the heroic age, the people of Agamemnon who fought at Troy. Their legacy is not written in sprawling palaces, but in colossal, grim fortresses that crown the hills of mainland Greece. The very term for their architecture says it all: cyclopean masonry. Later Greeks looked at the walls of Mycenae and Tiryns, built from gigantic, irregular blocks of limestone, some weighing more than 20 tons, and believed only the mythical one-eyed Cyclopes could have lifted them. These were not fitted with precision, they were brute forced into a terrifying puzzle. Workers would select a massive boulder, roughly shape it, and then painstakingly chip and grind its edges until it locked perfectly against its neighbors, all without a drop of mortar. The result is a wall that seems less built and more grown from the earth itself, an organic extension of the mountain, utterly impervious to attack. The most famous entrance to this forbidding world is the Lion Gate of Mycenae. Above the massive stone lintel, a triangular slab of relief sculpture shows two lionesses, their bodies powerfully rendered, standing on their hind legs and facing a central column. They are guardians in stone, a permanent statement of the ruling dynasty's strength and divine authority. To pass beneath them was to acknowledge you were entering a place of immense, concentrated power. These cyclopean walls were not just defensive, they were psychological warfare, designed to crush the spirit of any approaching enemy before a single arrow was fired. They announced Civilization Number 5, a society that mastered stone to project an image of unassailable might. While the Mycenaeans fortified the Greek hills, another empire of equal ferocity and sophistication was rising in the rugged highlands of Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. The Hittites built an empire on chariots, iron, and diplomacy, but they too understood the language of megaliths. Their capital, Hattusa, was a masterpiece of strategic defense sprawling across a rocky landscape. Its walls, built upon massive stone foundations, snaked for miles, and just like Mycenae, Hattusa had its own lion gate, a monumental entrance flanked by two fierce, full-bodied stone lions forever snarling at the outside world. But the Hittites added another, more mysterious layer to their stonework. Scattered throughout the city are several unique green stones, polished blocks of nephrite or serpentine. The most famous is a single, large, smooth green stone set into a wall near the king's gate. Its purpose is one of archaeology's charming puzzles. Was it a sacred object, a touchstone for oaths? A symbolic representation of the earth's fertility? Or perhaps a practical device, a central marker from which all distances in the empire were measured? We simply do not know. This enigmatic green stone captures the dual nature of Hittite megaliths. On one hand, the gigantic gateways and foundations speak of overwhelming military prowess, of an empire that could command the movement of colossal rocks to secure its borders. On the other, this single, carefully placed stone hints at a deeper, ritualistic relationship with the very materials of the earth. The Hittites did not just build with stone, they curated it, selecting specific, rare types for purposes that blended the practical with the profoundly spiritual. Together, the Mycenaeans and the Hittites, civilizations 5 and 6, represent the Bronze Age's armored fist. They took the megalithic toolkit and forged it into the ultimate symbol of territorial control, proving that the Wiltur-shaped mountains could be the foundation of an empire. South of Egypt, beyond the great cataracts of the Nile, a rival kingdom rose from the desert sands. The Nubians of the kingdom of Kush were not mere neighbors to the pharaohs. They were their fierce competitors, their occasional conquerors, and their brilliant architectural students. While they are often overshadowed by Egypt, the Kushites forged their own monumental legacy in stone, one that paints a different picture of pyramid building entirely. At the royal cemeteries of Nuri and later Meroe, they constructed not a handful of giant tombs but hundreds of them. The Nubian pyramid fields are a breathtaking sight, a forest of sharp, steep-sided stone peaks dotting the arid landscape. They are notably smaller and steeper than the smooth-sided giants of Giza, built with a distinct local flair. This was not simple imitation, it was adaptation. The Kushites used a core of rubble and sand, faced with precise, smaller stone blocks, creating a profile that is uniquely their own. Their staggering number tells a story of a long-lasting, stable monarchy where many rulers and even powerful queens warranted this eternal honor. Their megalithic ambition extended far beyond tombs. At the city of Meroe, they built magnificent temples to their gods, like the lion-headed warrior deity Apedemak. The walls of these temples were constructed from massive sandstone blocks, intricately carved with scenes of conquest and offering. Here, the stone itself becomes a narrative canvas depicting kings and queens in powerful relief, larger than life. They also continued the Egyptian tradition of erecting towering obelisks and statues, carving them from the local red and yellow sandstone. But they infused these forms with their own artistic sensibility, visible in the distinct facial features, regalia, and even the script used in their inscriptions. This blend of influence and innovation defines them. They adopted the megalithic language of Egypt, the pyramid, the temple block, the obelisk, but they wrote their own grammar with it. For centuries, the kingdom of Kush stood as a formidable power, even ruling Egypt as the 25th dynasty, the so-called Black Pharaohs. Their stonework is a permanent record of that confidence, a declaration that the drive to build colossal and eternal was not owned by one civilization, but was a prize to be claimed by any culture with the vision and the will to shape the very bedrock of their world. Across the Atlantic, in the humid lowlands of what is now Mexico, a civilization emerged from the jungle that would become the mother culture for all of Mesoamerica. The Olmecs, flourishing from around 1600 to 400 BCE, built their world not with pyramids of stone but by moving mountains of it. Their most iconic legacy is a gallery of giants, the colossal stone heads. 17 of these monumental portraits have been discovered, each one a single, breathtaking piece of basalt, a volcanic stone so hard it rings when struck. They stand up to 11 feet tall and weigh as much as 20 tons, the weight of 2 large elephants. Every detail, from the flattened nose and full lips to the distinctive helmet-like headgear, was painstakingly pounded and ground into existence using only stone tools. The mystery of their identity is as enduring as the rock itself. They are not gods but individuals. Each face is unique, with different expressions, headdresses, and even ear ornaments. The prevailing theory is that they portray powerful Olmec rulers, immortalized in stone to project their authority across the centuries. But to create them, the Olmecs first had to conquer distance. The basalt boulders were quarried from the Tuxtla Mountains, dragged and floated on rafts through rivers and swamps for over 60 miles to ceremonial centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta. They accomplished this without the wheel, without metal tools, and without draft animals like horses or oxen, which did not exist in the Americas at that time. It was a triumph of pure human ingenuity, coordination, and will. Yet the heads are only part of the story. At La Venta, they arranged massive stone altars and throne-like sculptures. One famous altar is carved to show a ruler seated in a niche, emerging from what seems to be a cave, holding a rope that binds captured prisoners. This was power carved in 3 dimensions, a political statement set in stone. These altars, some weighing over 40 tons, were often made from imported greenstone or serpentine, materials treasured for their color and rarity. The Olmecs were doing more than just moving rock, they were orchestrating a sacred landscape. They buried elaborate offerings of polished jade and serpentine blocks in long, ritual deposits, aligning them with celestial events. In doing so, they established a template. The concept of the sacred plaza, the massive stone sculpture depicting divine rulers, the use of colossal architecture to manifest political and spiritual power, all of this flows directly from the Olmecs to the Maya, the Zapotecs, and the Aztecs who came after. They were the foundational civilization, the first in the Americas to ask the land for its greatest stones, and to answer back with faces that still watch over the silent jungle. The Olmecs carved faces of power from living rock, but in the high Andes of Peru, another culture discovered how to make stone itself breathe and speak. The Chavin civilization, flourishing from around 900 to 200 BCE, built not just a temple but an instrument of awe. Their ceremonial center, Chavin de Huanta, sits at a dizzying 10,000 feet above sea level, a convergence of 2 sacred rivers. Here, they engineered an experience. The old temple is a maze of subterranean galleries, air ducts, and drainage channels, all built from massive blocks of granite and limestone, fitted together with a precision that rivals the finest Inca work centuries later. The stones are cut so exactly that they lock without mortar, a technique of such skill it seems to defy the primitive tools we assume they possessed. But the architecture was merely the stage. The true heart of the complex lies buried in the deepest, darkest chamber. This is the home of the Lanzon, a 15-foot-tall shaft of white granite carved into the image of a snarling deity. Part human, part feline, with clawed hands and a headdress of writhing snakes, it is a masterpiece of controlled terror. The monolith is positioned so that a single shaft of light on a specific day of the year would strike its glinting eyes. For a pilgrim navigating the narrow, pitch-black corridors, guided only by the distant, echoing sound of water rushing through hidden channels, the sudden sight of this illuminated monster would have been a seismic psychological event. And that sound was no accident. The engineers of Chavin built a network of acoustic conduits into the stone. A conch shell trumpet blown in one gallery would reverberate through the passages, its sound distorted and amplified, seeming to emanate from the walls themselves. This was a fully immersive theater of the senses. The stone carvings that adorn the walls reinforce this otherworldly journey. They depict figures in transformation, humans with feline fangs or serpentine hair, often shown holding the San Pedro cactus, a powerful source of the hallucinogenic compound mescaline. The message is clear: the temple was a gateway and the megaliths were the key. By combining perfect stonework with controlled light, manipulated sound, and psychoactive ritual, the Chavin priests created an undeniable reality. To walk those halls was to step into the realm of the gods, to feel their presence in the cold, immovable stone, and hear their voice in the echoing dark. This was power engineered not through threat but through transcendent experience, proving that the most formidable megaliths are not those that tower over you, but those that reach inside your mind. The stone that speaks in the dark gives way to a different kind of monument, one built not to disorient but to define the very order of the cosmos. In East Asia, the ancient Chinese civilizations of the Shang and Zhou dynasties crafted a world of staggering scale, yet their megalithic achievements are often hidden in plain sight, overshadowed by the later glories of the Forbidden City and the Great Wall. Their power was first expressed in earth and then decisively in stone. The earliest Shang capitals, like the great city at Zhengzhou, were encircled by walls that seem less built and more born of the landscape. These were not simple palisades, but colossal ramparts of pounded earth, layer upon layer laboriously compacted into a solid mass. In some sections, these defensive walls were over 60 feet thick at the base and stretched for miles. The labor involved was megalithic in every sense but the material, a testament to a state that could mobilize thousands to shape the ground itself into a permanent boundary. Yet within these earthen fortresses, the Shang rulers left clues of a more mysterious relationship with stone. At Yinzhou, the last Shang capital, the royal tombs plunged deep into the earth. While the tombs themselves were looted long ago, the architecture that remains is telling. Some of the largest tombs feature ramps leading down to the burial chamber lined with massive stone slabs. These were not mere structural supports, but carefully selected barriers between the world of the living and the world of the ancestors. Even more intriguing are the rare monolithic sculptures discovered, like the pair of large stone tigers found at one tomb complex, their stylized forms hinting at a tradition of monumental stone carving that archaeology is only beginning to uncover. The true bridge between earth, stone, and permanence, however, was cast in bronze. The Shang are famed for their ritual vessels, towering cauldrons and ornate wine cups used in ceremonies to communicate with ancestral spirits. To create these masterpieces, they first had to become masters of stone. Each vessel began as a complex mold, painstakingly carved from multiple blocks of stone or baked clay. These molds had to be perfectly engineered to withstand the tremendous heat of molten bronze and to capture every intricate detail of the design, from the swirling thunder patterns to the glaring faces of mythical creatures. This was megalithic thinking applied to metallurgy, using stone as the womb for sacred metal. This reverence for stone as a vessel extended literally to burial. In scattered sites from the Zhou period and beyond, archaeologists have discovered what are called stone canoe coffins. These are exactly what the name suggests: single, hollowed-out logs of sandstone or other soft rock, shaped like a dug-out canoe with a lid carved to fit. Placing a body inside was like setting it adrift in a boat of living rock, a permanent craft for the journey to the afterlife. The field of ancient Chinese megaliths remains wide open for discovery. From the massive, unexplained stone slabs at sites like the tomb of King Wu of Zhou to the possibility of lost ceremonial complexes, the evidence suggests a deep and continuous tradition of working with colossal stone that runs parallel to the more famous histories of jade and bronze. It reveals a civilization that understood permanence in multiple dimensions, from the pounded earth wall that defined a kingdom to the stone mold that gave form to its most sacred symbols. Far from the continents, a tiny archipelago in the heart of the Mediterranean holds a secret that rewrites the history of architecture. The islands of Malta and Gozo are a concentrated museum of the impossible, home to the world's oldest freestanding stone structures, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids of Egypt. This is the domain of the mysterious temple builders of Malta, a civilization that flourished for over 1,000 years and then vanished without a trace, leaving behind only their colossal, silent prayers in stone. Their masterpiece is the Göbekli temple complex on Gozo, whose name means the giant's tower. Approaching it, you are met by an outer wall of such staggering scale it seems the work of mythic beings. These are colossal corbelled walls built from enormous blocks of coralline limestone, some weighing over 50 tons. The builders employed a technique of inward stepping stones, each layer cantilevered slightly over the one below, creating a curved, tapering wall that rises high without any true arch. The scale is disorienting, a monument built for giants by people who stood barely 5 feet tall. The temples themselves follow a unique and haunting floor plan, a series of lobed chambers that archaeologists call the cloverleaf design. You walk through a monumental trilithon entrance, a doorway made of 2 upright stones capped by a massive lintel, and enter a series of interconnected, oval-shaped spaces. These are not random rooms, they are a carefully orchestrated procession with altars, libation holes carved into the floor, and mysterious stone screens that partition the space, perhaps controlling access for rituals only a privileged few could witness. Within these shadowy chambers, you might encounter the civilization's most iconic artifact, the so-called Fat Lady statues. These are voluptuous, headless figurines carved from stone with exaggerated hips and thighs. They are not portraits of individuals, but symbols of fertility and abundance, perhaps representing a mother goddess who presided over life, death, and regeneration in this isolated island world. But the true heart of the mystery lies not above ground but beneath it. The Hypogeum of Hal Saflieni is a 3-level underground sanctuary carved with infinite patience from the solid Globigerina limestone bedrock. This is not a cave that was adapted, it is an entire temple complex excavated from the top down, a mirror image of the above-ground structures. Descending its narrow steps is like entering another world. You pass through chambers with carved imitations of the corbelled stonework seen at Göbekli, as if the very rock was meant to mimic timber or masonry. One room, the Oracle Room, is famed for its acoustic properties. A deep voice spoken into a small niche creates a reverberation that echoes through the entire complex, a ghostly, disembodied sound that must have seemed like the voice of the earth itself. Another chamber, the Holy of Holies, is decorated with spirals and honeycomb patterns painted in red ochre, symbols whose meaning is lost to time. This underground labyrinth served as both a temple and a cemetery, holding the remains of over 7,000 individuals. Then, around 2500 BC, it all stopped. The building ceased, the temples were ritually closed, the people who created this stone wonderland disappeared from the archaeological record. There is no evidence of invasion, no sign of epidemic or catastrophic famine. They simply faded away, perhaps due to gradual environmental degradation, resource exhaustion, or a slow collapse of their belief system. They left no written language, no clear lineage to later cultures. All that remains are these silent, sprawling complexes of stone, a testament to a peaceful, artistically brilliant society that, for over a millennium, dedicated its entire creative energy to carving portals to the divine, both in the sun and in the dark heart of the earth. The silence of Malta's abandoned temples finds a startling echo on another Mediterranean island, one bristling with stone sentinels. Sardinia's rugged landscape is dominated by the Nuraghe, a forest of stone towers so numerous they defy belief. Over 7,000 of these conical, beehive-shaped structures dot the island, each one a fortress of interlocking basalt blocks built without a single drop of mortar. This is the legacy of the Nuragic civilization, a sophisticated and enigmatic warrior society that thrived for centuries in splendid isolation. Walking up to a Nurag like Su Nuraxi di Barumini, you are confronted by a masterpiece of dry stone corbelling. Massive, dark basalt blocks are carefully stacked in circles, each ring stepping inward until the walls meet high above in a domed ceiling. The precision is breathtaking. The stones are not cut into uniform shapes, but are selected and positioned so their irregular faces lock together under their own colossal weight, creating a structure that is both flexible and incredibly strong, able to withstand earthquakes and millennia of weathering. These were not solitary towers, they formed the nuclei of entire fortified villages. A central, often multi-story keep would be surrounded by a labyrinth of connecting walls, smaller towers, and a warren of circular huts, all built from the same mighty basalt. This was a society organized for defense and community. From the high ramparts, sentries could signal across vast distances with smoke or reflected light, creating an island-wide communication network that made Sardinia one of the most heavily fortified places in the ancient world. But the Nuraghe were more than just military architecture. They were also centers of social and economic life, where metalworking, storage, and governance took place under the cool, dark shelter of stone. This duality of purpose extends to their sacred sites. Scattered across the same landscapes are the giants' tombs, collective burial monuments with massive, often semicircular stone facades. The entrance to these tombs is typically a single, towering slab of stone with a small porthole carved into its base, a symbolic doorway to the afterlife that only the dead could pass through. Even more evocative are the sacred wells, breathtaking feats of hydraulic engineering. At sites like Santa Cristina, you descend a perfectly carved staircase into the earth, entering a subterranean chamber where a crystal-clear spring fills a stone basin. The ceiling above is a flawless corbelled dome with a small oculus that aligns with the moon at specific times, casting a beam of light down the shaft to touch the water. Here, the same society that built impregnable warrior towers also demonstrated a profound, celestial reverence for the life-giving forces beneath the earth. The Nuragic people left no deciphered written records, but their stone language speaks volumes. They built a world that was both fiercely defensive and deeply connected to the cycles of nature and the cosmos, creating an architectural signature found nowhere else on Earth. The Nuragic towers stand as a silent testament to a culture that fused fortress and temple, but across the Tyrrhenian Sea, another civilization was carving its legacy into the very cliffs of Italy. Before the glory of Rome, the Etruscans held sway over the heart of the peninsula, a wealthy and sophisticated people whose mastery of stone laid the very groundwork for the empire that would follow. Their world was one of vibrant cities and profound reverence for the afterlife, and they expressed both through monumental rock. To understand their power, you must descend into the earth, into their cities of the dead. The necropolises of Cerveteri and Tarquinia are not mere graveyards, but subterranean mirrors of Etruscan life. The most breathtaking example is the Tomb of the Reliefs, a chamber carved directly into the soft tufa bedrock. Stepping inside is not entering a dark crypt but a colorful, furnished home for eternity. The walls are sculpted to mimic a wealthy household, complete with stone pillars, shelves, and even hooks carved in relief, from which hang detailed replicas of kitchen utensils, armor, and shields, all painted in vivid hues. At the center lie stone couches carved from the living rock, where the deceased would recline as if at a perpetual banquet. This was more than decoration, it was a profound belief made physical, ensuring the comforts of life continued uninterrupted in the next world. But the Etruscan stonework was not confined to the realm of the dead. Their living cities were guarded by walls of staggering might. At places like Volterra and Perugia, you can still walk along ramparts built with what is called polygonal masonry. These are not uniform bricks, but enormous, irregular polygons of stone, each one uniquely shaped to fit perfectly against its neighbors like a gargantuan, three-dimensional puzzle. The joints are so tight that even after 2.5 millennia, you cannot slip a knife blade between them. This technique created walls that were not only militarily impregnable but also flexible, able to settle and shift with earthquakes without collapsing. It was a display of both brute strength and exquisite geometric understanding. This engineering genius extended to the practical infrastructure of their society. The Etruscans were master hydrologists. They carved deep, stone-lined wells and constructed elaborate underground drainage channels, the cuniculi, to drain marshy land for agriculture and to supply their cities with fresh water. They built sturdy stone bridges that spanned rivers, facilitating trade and movement. Every stone they laid served a dual purpose, combining formidable strength with sophisticated urban planning. When the rising power of Rome began to absorb Etruscan city-states, they did not discard this knowledge, they captured it. Roman engineers studied and adopted the Etruscan techniques of polygonal masonry for their own fortress walls and temple foundations. They embraced the principles of the cuniculi for their legendary aqueducts and sewer systems. The very arch, a hallmark of Roman architecture, has strong roots in Etruscan gateways and tomb designs. The Romans built an empire of stone, but the blueprint, the foundational confidence to shape a landscape with colossal rock, was an Etruscan inheritance. Their civilization may have faded into history, but their stone language became the grammar of an empire, echoing through every Roman road, aqueduct, and monument that followed. The legacy of the Etruscans flowed directly into the veins of Rome, but another civilization, equally foundational to the West, approached stone with a different philosophy. The ancient Greeks of the archaic and classical periods are celebrated for the luminous beauty of their marble statues and the elegant proportions of their temples. Yet before that refined grace was achieved, their architectural roots were planted firmly in the megalithic tradition. The earliest Greek temples, like the Temple of Apollo at Corinth from the 6th century BC, did not spring fully formed from the earth. Their soaring columns and sculpted pediments rested upon a hidden foundation of brute strength. The platform, or crepidoma, was built from colossal blocks of local limestone, each one weighing several tons, roughly shaped and fitted together to create an unshakable base for the delicate architecture above. This was the necessary muscle beneath the marble skin, but this connection to massive stonework ran even deeper, echoing a past they themselves considered heroic. When later Greeks built retaining walls for their sacred terraces, like those at the sanctuary of Delphi or the Acropolis in Athens, they often employed a style they called Cyclopean. This was a direct, conscious homage to the monstrous walls of Mycenae and Tiryns, which they believed were built by the mythical Cyclopes. These new terrace walls, constructed from gigantic, irregular boulders locked together without mortar, were more than just functional. They were a statement of continuity, a physical link to a legendary Bronze Age past of giants and heroes. The Greeks were master synthesizers, and their megalithic curiosity looked far beyond their own shores. Greek travelers and mercenaries in Egypt, centuries before Alexander, stood in awe of that civilization's stonework. They would have seen, lying in its quarry at Aswan, the unfinished obelisk of Hatshepsut. This colossal shaft, still attached to the bedrock, is a 1,200-ton lesson in process, showing the exact methods of extraction using pounding stones and channels. For a Greek observer, this was not just foreign engineering, it was a staggering manifesto of ambition carved in living rock. That impression was profound and lasting. When Rome later conquered Egypt, they became utterly captivated by these stone needles. emperors like Augustus and Constantius II went to incredible lengths to uproot entire obelisks, load them onto specially built ships, and transport them across the Mediterranean to be re-erected in the Roman Forum and the Circus Maximus. This was more than plunder, it was the ultimate cultural trophy. The Roman obsession with Egyptian obelisks represents a clear, direct transmission of megalithic ambition across three great civilizations. The Egyptian desire to carve a single piece of eternity, witnessed by the Greeks, was ultimately seized and monumentalized by the Romans, creating a chain of inspiration in stone that spanned the ancient world. The Roman obelisks were trophies of conquest, but in the highlands of Ethiopia, a civilization built its own stone needles from the very heart of its kingdom. The kingdom of Aksum, flourishing from the 1st to the 8th centuries, was a commercial powerhouse, trading gold, ivory, and exotic animals across the Red Sea to Rome and India. Its capital was a forest of stone, dominated by the most enigmatic megaliths in Africa, the Aksumite stelae. These are not simple pillars, they are multi-story stone skyscrapers carved with astonishing precision from single blocks of solid granite. They rise from the ground like slender, tapering towers, their facades meticulously sculpted to mimic the architecture of Aksumite palaces. You can see rows of false doors and windows, each one framed, even decorative metal hinges and beams carved in perfect relief into the unforgiving rock. They are ghost buildings, monuments that look like they should house the living but were built solely for the dead. The scale is almost incomprehensible. The largest of these, the Great Stele, now lies broken on the ground where it fell. In its prime, it would have stood over 100 feet tall, a monolith weighing an estimated 520 tons. That is heavier than any single stone block in the Great Pyramid of Giza. To carve such a thing from a mountain, to then transport it miles across rugged terrain, and finally to erect it vertically, represents an engineering puzzle that rivals the greatest works of Egypt or Rome. The process began at the quarry of Göbekli, where workers used a technique of heating the granite with fire and then dousing it with cold water to fracture it along precise lines. Then the real challenge began. We believe they used a system of ropes, wooden sledges, and possibly a slurry of wet clay to reduce friction, inching the monolith downhill. The final erection likely involved a massive pit, with the steel being pulled upright over a pivot point by hundreds of laborers coordinating their efforts with ropes and levers, a breathtaking ballet of human force and counterbalance. These stelae served as grave markers for the Aksumite elite, towering over underground burial chambers that were often richly furnished. They were more than tombstones, they were permanent residences for the spirit, ensuring the status and power of the individual translated seamlessly into the afterlife. The tallest stelae likely belonged to the Aksumite kings, whose authority was so absolute they could command the landscape itself to bear their memory. This unique megalithic tradition sets Aksum apart. While they were a literate Christian kingdom with coinage and international diplomacy, they chose this profoundly ancient physical language of colossal stone to express their deepest beliefs about death and legacy. It speaks to a powerful fusion of innovation and tradition, a sophisticated African civilization that looked to the mountains and saw not just stone, but immortality waiting to be carved. While Aksum's stelae reached for the sky, another civilization chose to carve its kingdom inward into the very heart of a mountain. The Nabateans, a nomadic Arab tribe turned mercantile empire, performed the ultimate act of megalithic reversal. Instead of assembling colossal stones, they removed them by the thousands of tons to sculpt a city from living rock. Their capital, Petra in Jordan, is a monument not of addition but of breathtaking subtraction. Imagine approaching through a narrow, winding canyon called the Sick, its towering walls shutting out the sky. Then, at the canyon's end, a sliver of light reveals a vision. The treasury, or Al-Khosneh, emerges, its ornate facade glowing with the hues of a desert sunset. This is not a building constructed block by block. It is the cliff face itself, painstakingly carved away to leave a two-story temple in perfect relief. Every column, statue, and urn was shaped from the solid rose-red sandstone, a process that required removing an estimated 20,000 tons of rock. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend. The facade stands over 120 feet high, a delicate architectural mirage hewn from a mountain. The Nabateans did this with simple iron tools and an extraordinary understanding of stone. They worked from the top down, carving channels and alcoves to guide their work, ensuring the final form emerged perfectly proportioned from the chaos of the quarry. This technique reached its zenith at the monastery, or Ad-Dair, an even larger monument perched high in the hills. Reaching it requires a climb up 800 rock-cut steps, a pilgrimage that ends before a facade soaring 160 feet, wide enough to dwarf the treasury. Its vast, unadorned upper section emphasizes the raw power of the excavation, a sheer wall of rock that had to be precisely removed to create the grand doorway below. But Petra is far more than two iconic facades. It is an entire cityscape carved and built. There is a Roman-style theater, its semicircle of seating not built from stacked stones, but excavated directly from the hillside, capable of holding thousands. Elaborate royal tombs with classical pediments stand side by side with simpler, cave-like chambers, a hierarchy in stone reflecting the city's social order. This city of stone could never have existed without one other equally brilliant form of engineering. The Nabateans were masters of hydraulic alchemy. In a desert region receiving only about 6 inches of rain a year, they built a complex network to capture every precious drop. They carved channels into the cliff walls to divert flash floods, constructed dams and reservoirs, and laid miles of ceramic pipes. Their most ingenious invention was the siphon system, which used gravity and sealed pipelines to carry water across deep ravines and up over ridges, delivering it to every part of the city, from the royal palaces to the humblest homes. This water system turned Petra into a literal oasis, supporting lush gardens, public fountains, and a population that may have reached 30,000. The Nabateans present a unique chapter in our megalithic story. They took the ancient impulse to shape stone and turned it inside out. Their legacy is a city of voids, of spaces created by what was taken away, proving that true megalithic power could be found not only in the assembly of mountains, but in the careful, glorious art of their removal. Petra's carved voids give way to a world where stone was built to touch the stars. In the dense jungles of Mesoamerica, the Maya civilization wove astronomy, artistry, and raw stone into a single, breathtaking tapestry. Their cities were not just collections of buildings, they were precise celestial instruments, engineered from the very bedrock of the Yucatan Peninsula. At the heart of this achievement was limestone, a relatively soft stone that the Maya mastered with flint and obsidian tools, quarrying it in colossal blocks to construct their iconic step pyramids. El Castillo at Chichén Itzá is the most famous example, a pyramid of 9 terraces with 4 stairways, each with 91 steps, a number that aligns with the solar calendar. But its true genius is revealed during the spring and autumn equinoxes. As the sun sets, the play of light and shadow creates the illusion of a serpent slithering down the northern staircase, connecting the temple at the summit to the stone serpent heads at the base. This was architecture as a cosmic clock, a mountain of stone designed to capture a moment of celestial alignment for all to witness. In the great city of Tikal, the pyramids pierce the jungle canopy like stone mountains. Temple 4, at over 200 feet, is one of the tallest pre-Columbian structures in the Americas. Its core is a mountain of rubble and earth, but its face is a meticulously fitted skin of massive limestone blocks, hauled up steep ramps by thousands of workers. The scale is staggering, but the Maya ambition went far beyond height. They were master sculptors of multi-ton stone. To create the wide doorways of their palaces and temples, they fashioned immense stone lintels, often made from hard sapodilla wood, but the most enduring ones were carved from solid limestone or even granite. These lintels, some weighing several tons, were intricately carved with scenes of rulers performing rituals, their details preserved for centuries under the protective overhang of the roof. Then there are the stelae, the true history books of the Maya. These are tall, freestanding stone monoliths, often paired with a circular altar stone. Carved from single blocks of stone, they depict powerful kings and queens in elaborate regalia, surrounded by hieroglyphic texts. It is here that the Maya fused art, history, and science with stone. The inscriptions record dynastic histories, conquests, and most importantly, precise dates using the sophisticated long count calendar, which could pinpoint an event to a specific day thousands of years in the past or future. Each stela was more than a portrait, it was a permanent anchor in the flow of sacred time, erected to commemorate a Katon, a 20-year cycle, and to solidify a ruler's legacy in the unyielding medium of rock. The entire city plan reflected this cosmic order. Plazas were oriented to track the movements of Venus, buildings were aligned to the solstice sun, and observatories like the Caracol at Chichen Itza featured narrow windows that framed specific astronomical events. The Maya did not just build with stone, they conversed with the heavens through it, turning entire cities into a durable, three-dimensional map of their profound understanding of time and space. The Maya charted the stars with their stone, but in the rugged spine of the Andes, another civilization achieved a level of stonework so precise it seems to defy the laws of physics. The Inca Empire, at its height in the 15th century, represents the absolute pinnacle of megalithic precision. Their legacy is written not in soaring pyramids, but in walls that feel less built and more woven from the living rock. Walk through the streets of Cusco, the ancient Inca capital, and you will see foundations that have withstood centuries of earthquakes that leveled the Spanish colonial buildings atop them. The most breathtaking example is a single wall along Hatenrumiok Street. Here, massive blocks of gray andesite, some with 12 distinct angles, fit together in a mesmerizing, three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. The joints are so exact that you cannot slide a razor blade or even a piece of paper between the stones. This was accomplished without mortar, without iron tools, and without the wheel. Each multi-ton block was individually shaped to lock perfectly with its neighbors, creating a structure that moves and breathes as one solid mass. The scale of this engineering becomes even more apparent at the fortress of Sacsayhuaman, which looms over Cusco. Its zigzagging walls are built from colossal limestone boulders, the largest weighing an estimated 120 tons. These stones were quarried miles away, dragged across mountainous terrain, and then lifted into place. The how of it remains one of archaeology's great debates. One persistent theory suggests the Inca might have used a plant-based compound to soften the stone, making it malleable for shaping. While no conclusive evidence supports this, we do know their primary method was meticulous, patient pounding. Workers would use harder stones to peck and grind the edges of each block, testing the fit repeatedly against its neighbor, a process of trial and error that could take months for a single stone. The result was a wall where every block is its own unique key and every neighbor is its lock. This was not just an artistic obsession, it was brilliant seismic engineering. When an earthquake strikes, a rigid wall of uniform bricks will crack and collapse, but an Inca wall with its interlocking polygonal blocks can flex and settle. The stones literally dance in place during a tremor, absorbing the energy, and then settle back into their perfect alignment once the shaking stops. This is a technology born of necessity in one of the world's most seismically active regions, a dialogue with the Earth's power written in granite and andesite. This philosophy reaches its serene zenith at Machu Picchu. Here, the Inca did not just place buildings on the mountain, they integrated the mountain into the architecture. Temple walls merge seamlessly with natural rock outcrops. A ceremonial altar is carved from a single, existing granite dome. The entire city is a testament to a worldview that saw no separation between human construction and the sacred landscape. The stones were not just material, they were living entities to be coaxed into a perfect, eternal harmony. The seamless stone walls of the Incas speak of harmony, but on the most remote inhabited island on Earth, a culture pursued a different kind of stone dialogue, one that nearly consumed the world it created. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, is the stage for civilization number 19, a society whose entire identity became fused with the creation of giants. The Moai are not just statues, they are ancestors made manifest, carved from the living heart of a volcano. The quarry at Rono Roroku is a factory of giants, a hillside where nearly 400 figures in various stages of completion stand frozen in time, as if the workers simply walked away. The rock here is a soft, compressed volcanic tuff, ideal for carving. Using only stone hand tools called toki, generations of craftsmen would outline a figure on the cliff face and then patiently chip away, shaping the distinctive features from the top down. The finished moai, some standing over 30 feet tall and weighing up to 80 tons, were then carefully undercut and detached, sliding down the slope on a prepared ramp of soil and rubble to begin their journey. That journey is the core of the mystery. How did a society with no wheels, no metal, and no large animals move these multi-ton colossus across miles of rugged terrain to coastal platforms? For decades, the dominant theory involved a form of ceremonial dragging. The statues were laid on wooden sledges or rollers made from the island's now vanished palm trees and pulled by vast teams using ropes. But a compelling alternative has gained ground, the idea that the moai were engineered to walk. By attaching ropes to the statue's head and base and using a coordinated rocking motion, teams could have literally walked the upright figure forward in a staggering, swaying procession. Experimental archaeology has shown both methods are possible, each a breathtaking feat of collective effort, rhythm, and engineering intuition. Their destination was the Ahu, massive stone platforms that served as sacred ceremonial centers. Erecting the moai on these platforms was the final, most dangerous act. Using a system of levers and a carefully constructed stone ramp, crews would inch the statue upward until it tilted forward onto the Ahu's front plaza. Then, with painstaking precision, they would lever the base forward until the giant stood upright on its stone foundation, its back to the ocean, its blank eyes gazing eternally over the clan's territory. The final act of deification came later with the addition of the pukao. These cylindrical top knots carved from a different quarry of red scoria stone could weigh over 10 tons. They were rolled across the island and then somehow lifted to perch atop the moai's head, possibly representing a hairstyle or a symbolic headdress of power. This all-consuming project spanning centuries may hold the key to the island's famous tragedy. The dominant narrative for decades was one of ecological suicide, a society that cut down every last tree for rollers, rope, and fuel, triggering soil erosion, crop failure, and a catastrophic societal collapse that toppled the statues in civil war. But newer research paints a more complex picture. It suggests the islanders were brilliant adapters, using rock gardens to enrich the soil and sustaining a considerable population. Their downfall may have been less about sudden collapse and more about a slow, devastating convergence, the arrival of European diseases and slave raids meeting an ecosystem already stressed by introduced rats and climate shifts. The true story of Rapa Nui is not a simple parable of folly, but a profound study in what happens when a culture's spiritual ambition, carved in ever larger stone, meets the hard, physical limits of a small and fragile world. The colossal stone faces of Rapa Nui gaze inland, but across the Pacific, a different kind of monument once dominated the heart of North America. Long before European contact, the banks of the Mississippi River were home to a sprawling metropolis that rivaled any in the world at its peak. This was Cahokia, the centerpiece of the Mississippian culture, a civilization that mastered the earth itself. While its most iconic features are the enormous earthen mounds, some over 100 feet tall, Cahokia also whispers of a megalithic tradition expressed in wood and rare, precious stone. At the western edge of the city, a structure known as Stonehenge stood. This was not a circle of stone, but of massive cedar posts, each one likely hauled from forests miles away. Archaeologists believe it functioned as a sophisticated solar calendar. A central observer, perhaps a priest or ruler, could watch the sunrise align with specific posts on the solstices and equinoxes, marking the agricultural and ceremonial cycles that governed this vast community. Stonehenge proves a profound point: the drive to create monumental alignments to capture the cosmos in architecture is not dependent on stone. It is a conceptual blueprint, and the Mississippians executed it perfectly with the materials their landscape provided. Their relationship with actual stone, however, is equally fascinating. True megaliths are rare in Cahokia, making the ones they did use incredibly significant. In the elite burial mounds, archaeologists have uncovered tombs lined with large, flat slabs of sandstone or limestone, forming a protective stone box around the deceased. These were not casually chosen rocks. They were carefully selected and transported, serving as durable markers of supreme status in a world built of earth and wood. Even more telling are the rare ceremonial objects like the finely crafted monolithic stone axes and the large, gracefully shaped chunky stones. The chunky game was a central public ritual, and these polished stone discs, some over a foot in diameter, were rolled while warriors hurled spears. The stone itself, smoothed and shaped over countless hours, became a focal point of social and spiritual life. What truly connects Cahokia to our global story of megaliths, however, is not a specific stone artifact but the sheer scale of organized labor. To build Monk's Mound, the largest earthen pyramid north of Mexico, required moving over 14 million baskets of soil, all by hand. This is the same core competency that moved 20-ton stones at Göbekli Tepe or 50-ton blocks at Giza. It is the ability to coordinate hundreds, even thousands of people toward a single, monumental goal that transcends generations. The Mississippians may have built with packed earth and wood, but their vision was megalithic in every sense. They transformed their entire landscape into a sacred geometry of mounds and plazas, proving that the impulse to reshape the world on a colossal scale is a human constant, whether your canvas is limestone, granite, or the very soil beneath your feet. The soil monuments of Cahokia reveal a universal drive to shape landscapes, but in the tropical jungles of Southeast Asia, that drive found expression in a city of stone so vast it was once the largest pre-industrial urban complex on Earth. This is the legacy of the Khmer Empire, centered at Angkor in Cambodia, a civilization that turned sandstone and water into a machine for both cosmic order and earthly survival. At its heart stands Angkor Wat, a temple complex so immense it could hold the entire Vatican City within its moat. Its silhouette with 5 lotus bud towers is iconic, but to walk its galleries is to step into a world of staggering megalithic ambition. The entire structure is a mountain of precisely fitted stone. The core material is laterite, a soft, iron-rich clay that hardens when exposed to air, used for the foundational walls and hidden structures. But the visible skin, every inch of it, is sandstone quarried from Mount Kulin over 30 miles to the northeast. We are talking about millions of blocks, each one cut, shaped, and transported on a scale that rivals the pyramids. The Khmer engineers solved the logistics with liquid genius. They constructed a network of canals using the seasonal flooding of the Tonle Sap Lake and the Siem Reap River. The massive sandstone blocks were floated down these artificial waterways on rafts, a continuous, watery conveyor belt delivering the very bones of the city directly to the construction sites. Once there, the stones were set without mortar, held in place by their own immense weight and precise carving, a technique that has allowed many structures to withstand centuries of jungle growth. But the Khmer did not just build with stone, they wrote on it. The outer gallery walls of Angkor Wat are not blank. They are a continuous stone canvas covered in over 1,200 square meters of bas-relief carving. These are not small decorations, they are epic narratives in stone depicting Hindu myths like the churning of the ocean of milk, vast processions of the historical Khmer army, and intricate scenes from heaven and hell. The detail is mesmerizing with thousands of individual figures, each one carefully chiseled into the sandstone, telling stories that would educate and inspire the pilgrims who walked these sacred corridors. This was architecture as a permanent scripture, a library carved directly into the walls of the universe. Yet the true scale of Khmer megalithic thinking extends far beyond a single temple. Just north lies Angkor Thom, a walled city 3 kilometers on each side, entered through monumental gateways topped by the serene, giant stone faces of the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara. These gates set the tone for the city's spiritual center, the Bayon Temple. Here, the stonework becomes an experience of surreal wonder. 54 towers, each carved with 4 of those enormous, smiling faces, gaze outward in every direction. Over 200 of these colossal visages, each several meters tall, survey the kingdom with a mysterious, knowing calm. To stand among them is to feel watched by the mountain itself, a breathtaking fusion of architecture and sculpture on a megalithic scale. But the Khmer genius was not confined to the divine. They understood that to support a metropolis of perhaps 1 million people in a monsoon climate, they needed to master water itself. Their solution was as monumental as their temples. They constructed vast artificial reservoirs called barrays. The largest, the West Barray, is an 8-kilometer-long, 2-kilometer-wide expanse, holding over 50 million cubic meters of water. Building these required moving earth and stone on a staggering scale, creating hydraulic batteries that stored monsoon rain to irrigate rice paddies during the dry season, ensuring food security for the massive population. This network of canals, moats, and reservoirs turned Angkor into a precise hydraulic machine, with the temples acting as both spiritual and topographic anchors in the system. The Khmer Empire presents a complete vision of megalithic civilization. They used millions of tons of stone to reach for the gods, carving entire cosmologies into their walls. Simultaneously, they moved millions of tons of earth and rock to tame the water, engineering the landscape for practical survival. In Angkor, the sacred and the utilitarian were built from the same bedrock, proving that the greatest stone monuments are those that serve both the soul and the society that dreams them into being. The stone libraries of Angkor were built by an empire rooted to the land, but across the limitless Pacific, a different kind of civilization carried the blueprint for megaliths in the hulls of their voyaging canoes. The Polynesian navigators, a constellation of cultures spanning from New Zealand to Hawaii, performed one of humanity's greatest feats, discovering and settling islands scattered across millions of square miles of open ocean. And wherever they made landfall, they brought with them a sacred architecture of stone. Their most widespread megalithic expression is the mari, a sacred ceremonial platform. These were not towering structures, but powerful, grounded spaces defined by large, carefully placed stone blocks. The most significant of all is Tapu Tapu Atia on the island of Raiatea, considered the spiritual heart of eastern Polynesia. Here, the mari is a vast, rectangular courtyard paved with smooth coral slabs, bordered by upright stones of basalt and coral that mark its sacred boundaries. At one end sits a great ahu, an altar platform built from massive layered stones. This was not just a local temple, it was a pan-Polynesian pilgrimage site, a place where navigators and priests from distant islands would gather to perform rites, share knowledge, and renew spiritual bonds that stretched across the sea. The stones of Tapu Tapu Atia are anchors in a liquid world, permanent coordinates in a cosmos navigated by stars, swells, and the flight of birds. This tradition of sacred stone traveled all the way to the Hawaiian archipelago, where it evolved into the heiau. These were temples of astonishing scale and variety, from simple family shrines to enormous state complexes built for kings. Their power rested in their foundations, massive platforms constructed from countless tons of water-worn basalt boulders, fitted together without mortar to create immense terraced stone canvases. The most striking example is Palu'ukohola Heiau on the Big Island of Hawaii. Its name means temple on the hill of the whale, and it rises from the arid landscape like a fortress of the gods. According to history, it was built at the end of the 18th century under the decree of the warrior chief Khmer the Great. A prophet had instructed that if he built this heiau and dedicated it to the war god Ku, he would unite all the Hawaiian islands. So Khmer commanded a human chain of thousands to pass stones from a valley over 14 miles away, hand to hand, until this colossal platform was complete. The stones were not cut but carefully selected and placed, their collective weight and alignment transforming the hill into a battery of spiritual and political power. Soon after its completion, Khmer achieved his prophesied unification. The story of Palu'ukohola captures the essence of Polynesian megaliths. They are community projects of immense logistical will, built to harness mana or spiritual energy for specific world-changing purposes. Whether it was the navigator's mari at Tapu-Tapuatia, a place of connection and learning, or the conqueror's heiau at Palu'ukohola, a tool of destiny, the stone platforms served as interfaces between the human and the divine. They proved that the megalithic impulse could survive the world's greatest ocean, carried not by invading armies, but by families in double-hulled canoes, who upon finding a new shore, immediately began to build their sacred geometry with the most permanent material they could find, reaffirming their place in a vast and watery universe. The Polynesian heiau were platforms of power built for specific rulers, but in the misty green landscapes of the British Isles, megaliths belonged to the entire community. This region, a tapestry of Neolithic and Bronze Age cultures, offers a different story written in circles, mounds, and solitary stones. While Stonehenge is the famous icon, it is merely the crescendo of a building tradition that began centuries earlier with earthworks that reshaped the very concept of space. Before the great sarsens were raised, people were digging causewayed camps, massive enclosures defined by concentric rings of ditches and banks. These were gathering places on a colossal scale, where communities from across the landscape would converge for trade, ritual, and social bonding, literally creating common ground. They also built long barrows, earthen tombs chambered with massive stone slabs where generations of a family or clan were laid to rest together, binding the living to their ancestors through shared monuments. This communal spirit found its most profound expression in stone circles, and here Stonehenge does not stand alone. Far to the north, on the Isle of Lewis in Scotland, the Callanish stones rise from the peat bog like a petrified forest. This is not a simple ring, but a complex cruciform shape with a central stone circle, lines of standing stones radiating outward, and a chambered tomb at its heart. The setting is dramatic, the stones themselves thinner and more ragged than the smooth sarsens of Salisbury Plain. Their alignment captures the complex 18.6-year cycle of the moon, tracking its extreme rising and setting points on the horizon with a precision that required generations of observation. It is a lunar computer built from gneiss. In southern England, the Avebury complex is of a scale that dwarfs even Stonehenge. Here, a vast henge, a circular bank and ditch over a kilometer in circumference, encloses an entire village. Within this giant earthen circle sits not one but 3 separate stone circles. Walking among these massive, irregular sarsens, some weighing over 40 tons, you get a sense of a lived-in sacred landscape, where the monumental was integrated into the daily world in a way Stonehenge's later isolation does not convey. The mastery of these builders extended from the sky to the underworld, exemplified by the great passage tombs of Ireland. Newgrange is a wonder of the ancient world. From the outside, it appears as a massive, grass-covered mound, but its entrance is guarded by a single, spectacular carved stone covered in spirals and diamond shapes. The magic, however, lies within. A long, narrow passage of upright stones leads to a central chamber with a corbelled roof. This roof is a masterpiece of Neolithic engineering. Over thousands of years, without a single supporting pillar, layer upon layer of flat stones were stacked, each one stepping inward until they met at the top in a perfect, waterproof vault. It has held for over 5,000 years, but the true genius is celestial. Above the entrance is a small, square opening called the roof box. For just a few minutes at dawn on the winter solstice, and for several days before and after, a beam of sunlight shoots through this roof box, travels down the 60-foot passage, and illuminates the central chamber floor in a golden blaze. This was not an accident. It was a deliberate, breathtaking feat of architectural alignment, designed to capture the rebirth of the sun on the year's darkest day, bringing light and hope into the tomb of the ancestors. Scattered across Cornwall, Wales, and the moors are countless other silent witnesses. Menhirs, single standing stones that mark a route, a burial, or a territory. Dolmens, table-like structures of massive capstones balanced on uprights, the skeletal remains of chambered tombs whose earthen mounds have long since washed away. Each one, from the largest circle to the smallest marker, represents a staggering communal effort. Quarrying these stones, transporting them miles without the wheel, shaping them with stone mauls and antler picks, required the coordinated labor of hundreds, likely drawn together during seasonal festivals. This was not the work of a coerced underclass, but of a society that shared a unified vision of the cosmos, one where the cycles of the sun and moon, the realm of the ancestors, and the land of the living were all connected through these permanent anchors of stone. They built not for a pharaoh or an emperor, but for the community and for eternity, encoding a deep, hard-won astronomical knowledge into the very bones of their landscape. The communal stone circles of Britain were anchored to a specific, verdant landscape, but some civilizations had to carve their paradise from pure rock and sand. In the blistering deserts of southern Arabia, where rain is a rare and fleeting gift, the ancient kingdoms of Saba and later Himyar performed an act of pure defiance. This is the land linked forever to the legendary Queen of Sheba, a realm whose fabled wealth of frankincense and myrrh was built upon one audacious megalithic achievement, the Great Dam of Marib. To understand their genius, you must first understand the threat. The landscape here is carved by wadis, dry riverbeds that can transform in minutes into raging, catastrophic flash floods during the rare monsoon rains. The Sabaeans did not try to stop this water, they aimed to tame it. They chose a narrow point between two hills and built a wall, but this was no simple barrier. The dam was a colossal piece of hydraulic engineering, initially constructed as early as the 8th century BCE and continually enhanced for over a millennium. Its core was built from massive, quarried stone slabs, fitted together and reinforced with compacted earth and rubble. It stretched nearly 2,000 feet across the wadi, standing over 50 feet high, creating a vast reservoir that could capture the sudden, violent floods. A complex system of stone sluice gates, channels, and secondary dams then distributed the life-giving water through a network of canals to terraced fields stretching for miles across the desert plains. For centuries, this stone and earth machine turned the region around Marib into a lush, green breadbasket, supporting a population of perhaps 50,000 people in the heart of the arid Arabian Peninsula. It was the foundational mega-project that made everything else possible, a man-made oasis sustained by precise stonework. The wealth generated by this agricultural paradise and the lucrative incense trade financed cities of stone. At the heart of the Sabaean spiritual world stood the temple of Maram Bilqis, dedicated to the moon god Olmaka. Today, its ruins are a forest of stone. The temple complex was defined by a vast oval enclosure wall, and within it stood a procession of towering, monolithic pillars, Each pillar was carved from a single block of stone, soaring over 20 feet high and topped with a distinctive capital. These were not merely structural supports, they were symbolic entities, perhaps representing the deities or the sacred trees of the oasis, standing as permanent witnesses to centuries of rituals and pilgrimages. The scale of the precinct, with its altars and inscribed offering tables, speaks of a site that drew worshippers from across the kingdom, a spiritual capital built to match the engineering capital of the dam. This mastery of monumental construction took a breathtaking turn in the later Khmerite period in the city of Shibam. Rising from the desert floor, Shibam is known as the Manhattan of the desert, but its origins are ancient. To protect against Bedouin raids, people began building upward, using the very earth beneath them. The famous tower houses, some dating back to the 16th century but standing on ancient foundations, are skyscrapers of mud brick. Yet their secret strength lies in their stone feet. The ground floors and foundations of these structures, some rising over 100 feet tall, are built from massive stone blocks. This stone base provides a solid, flood-resistant plinth that anchors the entire earthen tower, a brilliant fusion of megalithic stability and adaptive local material. It is a direct architectural descendant of the Sabaean, understanding that in this environment, permanence begins with stone. That desire for permanence extended to their historical record. The Sabaeans and Khmerites left behind a gallery of stone autobiographies. They erected tall, slender obelisks and stelae, meticulously inscribed with the South Arabian alphabet. These are not small notches on a rock, they are formal public monuments. They record everything from royal decrees and construction projects to military victories and religious dedications, ensuring that the deeds of kings and the laws of the land were fixed in an indestructible medium under the relentless sun. In the deserts of Arabia, stone was not just a building material, it was the counterweight to oblivion. From the dam that held back the desert to the pillars that reached for the gods, and the inscribed slabs that spoke to the future, every massive stone was a declaration that here, in one of Earth's most challenging environments, a civilization could not only survive but flourish with monumental grace. The deserts of Arabia proved that stone could defy the harshest environments, but along the arid coast of ancient Peru, a civilization mastered a different kind of alchemy, blending earth, water, and stone into a monumental whole. Our final civilization, number 25, is the Moche, who flourished from about 100 to 800 CE. They are famed for their stunningly realistic portrait pottery and gold work, but their true legacy is written in the landscape itself, a testament to building colossal with whatever the land provided. Their signature material was adobe, sun-dried mud bricks, and with it they constructed one of the largest pyramids ever built in the Americas, the Huaca del Sol. This was not a solid stone mountain, but a towering ziggurat of over 140 million adobe bricks rising in tiered platforms. Yet even this earthen giant was not left bare. Archaeological evidence suggests its imposing facade was originally covered in a smooth, protective layer of fitted stone slabs. They took their monumental mud and dressed it in a stone skin, merging the two materials into a single statement of power. But the Moche's survival, and thus their ability to build, depended on a more urgent kind of engineering. Their homeland is a narrow strip of desert between the Pacific Ocean and the Andes, where rivers flow only seasonally. To feed their cities, they had to conquer the desert itself. Their solution was a hydraulic network of astonishing ambition. They did not just dig irrigation canals, they engineered them as permanent stone-lined arteries. The Escope Aqueduct is a masterpiece of this kind. It is not a small channel, but a massive stone-built canal that stretches for over a kilometer, and in places, it is raised high above the ground on solid stone walls. This was a river redirected, lifted, and contained within a man-made stone course, allowing the Moche to bring water to fields far from the natural riverbed, turning barren sand into fertile farmland. This control of water was the foundation of their society, and it was mirrored in their spiritual architecture. At sites like the Huaca de la Luna, a complex adjacent to the Sun Pyramid, we see the full, ritualistic fusion of their materials. The temple is a layered cake of adobe bricks, but its plazas and ceremonial platforms are often defined by high walls of stone and adobe. Most haunting are the murals. The Moche covered their temple walls in polychrome frescoes depicting their deities like the fanged decapitator god, but they also used sculpted adobe friezes. These are not small decorations. They are massive, repeating figures of warriors, prisoners, and supernatural beings, molded directly into the temple walls, a narrative in relief that towered over the participants in the rituals below. And what were those rituals? The Moche's own ceramic art provides startling clues. Their fine-line pottery depicts elaborate ceremonies involving the consumption of a hallucinogenic drink, the sacrifice of prisoners of war, and the presentation of ceremonial cups to elite rulers. Archaeologists have found physical evidence matching these scenes at the Huaca de la Luna, including the remains of sacrificed warriors and ceremonial spaces that align with the artistic depictions. This creates a powerful loop. The art shows the rituals, and the stone and adobe architecture provides the stage where those rituals were physically performed. The Moche did not see a division between the monumental and the practical, or the spiritual and the hydraulic. The stone-lined canal that fed the people and the stone-faced pyramid that housed the gods were two parts of the same system, a unified effort to sustain both the body and the cosmic order in a demanding world. They conclude our global journey not with the purest stonework, but with a profound lesson in adaptation, showing that the megalithic spirit is not about the material alone, but about the unwavering will to shape your world, whether your tools are carved granite or molded earth into a form that endures. Across 25 civilizations, from the sun-baked plains of Egypt to the cloud forests of Peru, a single question echoes louder than any other. How did cultures separated by oceans and millennia, speaking languages now lost to time, all arrive at the same breathtaking conclusion that the most permanent expression of human will is a mountain shaped by hand? The answers lie not in magic, but in a shared, hard-won toolkit of physics and patience, repeated around the globe with startling similarity. The most universal method for moving the unmovable was the sledge. From the pharaoh's quarries to the slopes of Rano Raraku, we find evidence of massive wooden sledges. The Egyptians perfected the art of lubrication, pouring water onto the sand ahead of the sledge to create a slick mud that dramatically reduced friction. This simple, brilliant trick turned a desperate haul into a manageable pull, allowing teams to drag statues weighing 700 tons. In other lands, they might have used clay slurry or even plant oils. The principle was identical: reduce the grip of the earth beneath you. Once the stone was moving, rollers came into play. Imagine a series of felled tree trunks placed like wheels under a colossal slab. As the stone is pulled forward, rollers at the back are constantly picked up and moved to the front, creating a continuous, if painstakingly slow, conveyor belt. This method likely moved the bluestones of Stonehenge from Wales and the moai of Easter Island across their rugged terrain. For the final, most delicate act of lifting and positioning, the lever was king. A strong timber placed under a stone's edge, with a pivot point and a team applying downward force, could lift a corner just enough to slip a stone packer underneath. Repeating this process, inch by inch, could raise a multi-ton block onto a platform or guide it into a perfect joint. Some speculate about more complex counterweight systems, using sand-filled containers or earth ramps that were later excavated to tip stones upright. While evidence is rare, the sheer fact of a standing moai or an Egyptian obelisk demands a sophisticated understanding of balance and pivot points that feels, in its own way, like a form of applied magic. Beyond the physics of movement, another pattern emerges, written not in tool marks but in the alignment of stones with the heavens. This celestial conversation is a global phenomenon. The Great Pyramid shafts point to specific stars, Stonehenge's heel stone frames the summer solstice sunrise. The Maya pyramid of El Castillo becomes a serpent of shadow on the equinox. The Callanish stones in Scotland track the moon's complex 18-year cycle. Newgrange's roof box captures the winter solstice sun. These are not coincidences. They represent generations of patient observation, a deep desire to anchor human life to the reliable, majestic cycles of the cosmos. Building these alignments required planning that spanned decades, a long-term vision that saw a project through from its first surveyed sightline to its final, perfect alignment a lifetime later. This shared celestial language suggests a universal human impulse to find order and meaning in the sky, and to build that understanding permanently into the bones of the earth. Which leads us to the great, lingering mysteries. How did pre-literate cultures without blueprints or written engineering manuals achieve such flawless precision? The joints in an Inca wall or an Egyptian granite chamber are machine-like. The answer may lie in a culture of embodied knowledge, where techniques were passed down through apprenticeships, refined over centuries and encoded in ritual and song. A master mason didn't need a written formula. He had the feel of the stone, the inherited knowledge of angles, and the communal memory of what worked. Was there a lost common knowledge, a single source that taught the world to build big? While fascinating, the sheer diversity of styles and the vast separations in time and space make a single source unlikely. Instead, we are witnessing the universal application of human ingenuity when faced with a universal human desire to create something that lasts, to honor the gods, the ancestors, or the king in the most permanent way possible. It is the story of observation meeting necessity, fueled by an immense communal will. A society that could convince thousands of its people to dedicate their lives to hauling stone for a monument they would never see finished was a society bound by a belief powerful enough to move mountains. In the end, the true megalith is not the stone itself, but the collective human spirit that chose to lift it. That shared drive to shape the world, witnessed from Göbekli Tepe to the Moch, forms a single, unbroken thread in the human story. We have crossed 11,000 years and every inhabited continent, meeting 25 distinct civilizations, each with its own gods, its own language, and its own vision of eternity. Yet they all spoke the same silent, powerful language of megaliths. This journey reveals far more than ancient engineering. It uncovers the deepest currents of our collective past. These colossal stones are a testament to an ambition that transcends mere survival. They speak of a need to reach for the divine, to align our fleeting lives with the eternal cycles of the stars and seasons. They are proof of a profound spiritual belief so powerful it could mobilize generations to a single, staggering task, but they also map the evolution of human society itself. From the communal gatherings at the British Henges to the state-organized armies of laborers in Egypt, these projects required a level of social organization, cooperation, and shared purpose that is the very bedrock of civilization. They are the ultimate expression of our desire to leave a mark, to shout into the future, "We were here and we mattered." In the end, these silent sentinels of stone ask us a fundamental question about our own place in time. What do we build today that will speak for us millennia from now? The legacy of these ancient builders is not locked in the past, it is an invitation. It invites us to look at these sites not as ruins but as ongoing conversations with humanity's most audacious dreams. So we turn the question to you. After this global expedition, which of these 25 sites captures your imagination the most? Is it the celestial clockwork of Newgrange, the walking giants of Easter Island, or the woven stone of the Incas? Share your choice in the comments below. We would love to hear which mystery resonates with you. If you enjoyed this journey through the ancient world, be sure to subscribe for more explorations into history's greatest enigmas. Remember, these stones are not done telling their stories. They stand patiently, waiting for us to listen.